While still in his 20s, Jonathan Safran Foer wrote two critically acclaimed novels. Everything is illuminated and extremely loud and incredibly close, both of which were turned into films.
Are you there? Are you there?
That second novel was set to the backdrop of 9/11 and a son dealing with the death of his father. The story set him up as his generation's chronicler of America, drawing comparisons to Don DeLillo and Philip Roth. But that was more than 10 years ago. Now he's finally followed up with a third, Here I Am, described as a novel about the claims of identity, history, family, and the burdens of a broken world. He's visiting Britain at the moment, so we invited him into the studio to talk about all of that and, of course, the state of US politics. But I began by asking him whether his latest book is a depiction of family, his depiction of family and a messy life were reflective of his own.
I have an extremely messy life, but I've never met anyone who doesn't. In fact, it might not be the worst description for what family life is. It's the thing that's most messy. And I love that description of the book. That's exactly how I think about it.
There's been a lot of chat about cultural appropriation and whether novelists should write about experiences that aren't their own. You're writing what you know. Where do you stand on that broader debate?
At times I'm writing what I know, and at times I'm not writing what I know. Often I don't know if I know what I'm writing about, or it's only revealed to me later. W.H. Auden said I look at what I write so that I can see what I think. I didn't start the book with ideas and then try to express them or encode them. In the process of writing, I encountered myself and my ideas.
Do you think there's a generational divide in terms of American Jewish identity?
I think that any kind of identity, for any kind of identity, there are generational divides in British identity, in American identity, in identity as a Democrat or Republican, and certainly in Jewish identity. And in Jewish identity, it might even be more, or it's particularly extreme, because each generation has had such a different and specific experience.
What makes it extreme, would you say?
Well, my grandmother, every member of her family was murdered. You know, my mother was born in a DP camp and came to the United States. I have those people as my, parents and grandparents, and yet have a kind of fully assimilated life in America.
And thinking about anti-Semitism, some people say when they criticize Israel, they're being anti-Zionist and not anti-Semitic. Do you see a distinction between those two terms?
In terms of the conflation of being anti-Israel and anti-Jew, that is a mistake. One is perfectly capable of criticizing the practices of Israel without making any kind of broader statement about Jewish people. I am a Jew, and I am often critical of the actions of Israel, just as I am an American, and I am often critical of the actions of America.
And as someone who chronicles American life, perhaps, what do you make of what's happening politically?
It's very hard to make sense of. On the one hand, we have, one of the most experienced and capable presidential candidates ever, and then this sentient hemorrhoid, basically, who is a demagogue and brings nothing of substance or even interest anymore to the national debate.
You're not mincing your words on Trump, but he does have support, though, doesn't he? What do you put that down to?
Well, we have a two-party system, so a huge number of voters are automatically going to be in either one of the parties.
But he seems to be tapping into something else, isn't he? A sort of anti-politics moment.
I think he was tapping into something else when he was still easy to be misunderstood. He was tapping into a frustration, which is real and which is not to be dismissed and not to be belittled. But he is not a spokesperson for the solution to that frustration. He was just an embodiment of that frustration.
And how does America move on from this after the election in terms of the actual polarization, in terms of that very raw frustration people are feeling?
Every election in America is polarizing. We haven't had a landslide in an awfully long time, and we continue to function. And, it's one of the things that is most wonderful about American democracy is that in every historical moment, at least up until now, you can have, two parties butting heads, two sets of values conflicting in ways that can approach something almost violent rhetorically, and then a president is elected, and the next day everybody respects that president, and we get on with never passing any laws.
I mean, you say up until now, is this the moment that it all changes?
I think Trump's rhetoric is different, especially when he talks about how the election is rigged. That's something we've never, ever heard before. And it's planting ideas that are extremely dangerous. But for them to be dangerous, he has to be taken seriously, and I don't think he's taken seriously anymore.
So you don't seem particularly worried about Trump then?
No, I'm extremely worried.
But what I mean is, you seem to think that the election is over pretty much.
Yeah, but I also thought Brexit wouldn't pass, and I also thought the peace treaty in Colombia would. So we're proven wrong all the time. And
so you're not putting money on anything?
You know, let me put it this way. I will volunteer at phone banks in the week before the election, not because phone banks are a fun place to hang out, but because I think it's the right thing to do to take it seriously enough to work.
Jonathan Safran Foer, thanks very much.
Thank you.